Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must admit that I'm somewhat astonished by your testimony that shifts responsibility from this administration to Congress for America's current inability to launch astronauts into space. Let's be clear for a moment. This administration made the unilateral 2010 decision to cancel NASA's human spaceflight Constellation program, thereby delaying America's return to human spaceflight. This administration made the decision to mothball our space shuttles and put them in museums rather than keeping them available should circumstances or emergencies dictate their use. This administration has grown America's welfare wealth transfer programs to over $750 billion per year, more than 40 times NASA's budget, welfare programs that put a higher priority on buying election votes, no matter the loss of funding for NASA, national defense, or other productive functions of the federal government. Now I hear testimony that this administration wants to invest in America, quote, unquote, when the Space Launch System, NASA's next human spaceflight program, was forced on this administration by Alabama Senator Richard Shelby and other senators and congressmen who believe in Americans' exceptionalism in space. With that as a backdrop, as you know, Russia is engaged in acts of war against the Ukraine in the Crimea. America's response has been rather anemic economic sanctions, sanctions designed to provide maximum domestic political cover without any hope of causing Russia to leave the Crimea. Recent intelligence information raises the concern that Russia may go beyond the Crimea and attack eastern Ukraine. All of this raises the specter that this administration will impose more economic sanctions, which in turn risk that Russia will respond by denying America access to the International Space Station. And they can do that because we're reliant on Russia to get to the International Space Station. In the time remaining, Mr. Administrator, please describe to this committee what NASA's plan is to put American astronauts on the International Space Station should Russia say they're no longer going to give us a ride to the space station.
Mr. Chairman, may I get the chart again? Because and Congressman Brooks, I'm not going to engage in a debate about history. It is a fact that the decision to phase out the shuttle was not made by the Obama administration. That decision was made following the recommendation of the Columbia Accident Investigation Board in 2004 under the Bush administration.
Excuse me, if I might interject. When the space shuttle was mothballed, President Obama was President of the United States.
That's right.
He could have made any decision he wanted to make. Wait a minute, let me finish. He could have made the decision to have continued to use the space shuttle, or he could have made the decision to keep it available in the event of emergencies. He chose not to.
Mr. Congressman Brooks, I will just make one statement. I was the one who recommended to the President that we phase the shuttle out. I would have recommended we phase it out quicker. I just mentioned we were spending $12 billion over the same period of time that we have spent $12.5 billion on SLS and Orion now.
Okay, let me interject again. No, wait a second. You said you were not going to go over history. You were able to divert from my question to history. My question was, if Russia cuts us off today because of the events in the Ukraine or elsewhere in the world, what is NASA's plan to get us to that space station?
Congressman, we engage in contingency planning every single day. Contingency planning for Russia refusing to take us to the International Space Station is something that I consider to be feasible right now, because Russia is dependent upon the United States to operate the International Space Station. When it comes to power, when it comes to everyday operations, that's all done by the United States. Russia has one thing that we need: access. If the International Space Station...
Okay, back to my question. Is it your testimony that America has no plan? Because you don't think it's a possibility to worry about.
This is like asteroids. We have a plan. The plan needs to be funded. The plan is commercial crew. If the Congress chooses not to fund commercial crew, this nation has no plan.
Okay, I have looked at your written statement, and it says, and consistent with your oral statement, that basically we're looking at the end of 2017, which is 3.5 years away. Is that the plan if Russia decides to terminate our access to the International Space Station?
Congressman Brooks, I am confident, based on my conversation with my Russian counterparts, that they are equally worried about terminating activity on the International Space Station. So, I'm not going to deal in suppositions. I don't expect that our partners will abandon the International Space Station, which would be
okay, Mr. Chairman, I see my time is expiring. I appreciate the witness's insight, but if all I'm hearing is that our only plan is 3.5 years away, I have to worry about what happens if Russia does cut us off as our relationship with Russia continues to deteriorate based on Russian acts of war in the Ukraine and Crimea. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Administrator, back to the issue with Russia and our ability to get to the International Space Station. What would be the consequences to the operational capabilities of the space station if within the next year Russia chooses to deny us access by no longer allowing us to hitch a ride on their rockets?
As I mentioned before, because we provide navigation, communications, power, and as I responded to somebody else, station would probably, and I hate to deal in conjecture, the partners would probably have to shut the space station down.
And if the space station is shut down?
If you're thinking that the Russians will continue to operate the International Space Station, can't be done.
And if the space station is shut down for an extended period of time, say years,
I don't need it. I will not need it. I will come to this. I will go to the President and recommend that we terminate SLS and Orion, because without the International Space Station, I have no vehicle to do the medical tests, the technology development, and we're fooling everybody that we can go to deep space if the International Space Station is not there. That's the reason that we and Roscosmos and ESA and JAXA and everyone agree that, hey, no matter what else is going on the surface of Earth, if we want to do this global exploration roadmap to which 12 different nations signed up, we have to have the International Space Station. That's the reason that the President said, okay, I'll agree to extend it to 2024, and we're going, I mean, you know, I don't want anyone to think that I need an SLS or Orion if I don't have the International Space Station.
Well, let me make sure I understand the sequence of events from your testimony.
Very plainly.
Let me make sure I understand the sequence of events from your testimony, and you correct me if I err. If the Russians deny us access to the International Space Station, it's your testimony that because of what services we provide to the International Space Station, you would have to shut it down. And if the International Space Station is shut down, you in turn would then see no reason to have the Space Launch System or Orion, so is it fair for me to infer that you would then recommend that those programs be shut down too?
And I need to correct what I said if I said it. I don't know that the Russians denying us access, you know, you're assuming that they come today and say, okay, you're not going anymore, and we're not going to bring your crew home, so figure out how to get them home. I don't think that any of those contingencies are going to happen.
Well, I understand that there are probabilities that are involved.
You're giving me, and I don't accept that as a viable supposition.
I'm one of those that believes in planning for all contingencies. It's much like the effort to acquire an asteroid.
We didn't plan.
I don't think that the odds of an asteroid hitting us in the next few years are very big, but nonetheless, to me, that is an interesting mission because of the risk associated with one eventually hitting Earth and our having the capability of being able to thwart that. Granted, the Russians may not, over the next couple of years, shut us off from access to the International Space Station, and all they have to do is deny us the ride that we keep thumbing with them, which they, if they're willing to attack other nations, it doesn't seem beyond the realm of possibility that they also might be willing to deny American astronauts rides to the International Space Station. But having said that, if the International Space Station is shut down for any extended period of time, can it be resuscitated?
I will take that for the record. You know, anything can be done. You're asking for suppositions, Congressman Brooks.
Well, I'm asking for your expertise and insight on that subject.
I am not an expert on the environmental control and life support system of the International Space Station. So I said I will take that for the record.
Thank you.
I mean, there is no either or in terms of SLS and Orion and commercial crew. And I don't know how many ways to say that.
All right.
I know there are a lot of you who would like to say...
Thank you. You've answered my question.
Bear with me. You
well,
asked
if the chairman will give me another minute in order to ask one other question.
This is the last thing I will say. If I don't have commercial crew and I can't get to low Earth orbit, I don't need SLS and Orion. I showed you the exploration roadmap. If I can't get to low Earth orbit, there is no exploration program.
All right, if I could go to my final question then. There was a study done entitled Human and Nature Dynamics, Modeling Inequality and Use of Resources on the Collapse of Sustainability of Societies. And it concluded in part that income inequality contributes to the collapse of societies. It has come to my attention that the study also states, quote, this work was partially funded through NASA/GSFC grant NNX12AD03A, end quote, and that NASA contributed $26,000 to a study on income inequality, or that involved income inequality. Why is NASA spending money that should be related to space exploration, at least in my view, on income inequality issues?
NASA did not request such study. We did not endorse such study. We have not reviewed such study. The study was done at the University of Maryland as an offshoot of a study we did request on another subject. You know, we don't control what a principal investigator chooses to do if they can get additional studies in.
But it's your money. It's $26,000 in NASA funding. Are you telling me that NASA doesn't control what this money is being spent on?
An investigator performs the study that we request, and if they choose to amplify the study with additional information or additional data for their own use, we don't prohibit them from doing that.
Well, thank you for sharing that information.
It is not a NASA study, neither endorsed nor requested by us.
But paid for by NASA, in part.
You got it.
Time has expired. At this time, I want to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter. Oh, I'm so sorry. At this time, I recognize the gentlewoman from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Administrator Bolden, for staying for a second round of questions. I wanted to follow up on the international partnerships and international cooperation, which we've talked about a lot in this subcommittee, and we all appreciate the importance of it. And we've had some discussions about that this morning. But what I wanted to talk about is, in light of the proposal to shut down SOFIA, what are the risks of the international partners coming to view NASA as an unreliable partner, for example? What has been the response of the international community when they found out about the SOFIA proposal?
Well, the only members of the international community concerned about SOFIA so far have been the Germans, because that is our principal partner there. And before we announced the budget, Dr. Jan Werner and I had a long telephone conversation, and that's where we decided that we would set up a co-chaired working group to look at options for SOFIA, and that's what I referred to earlier. A final decision on SOFIA has not been made because we don't know what the 2015 budget is going to say. But as Congressman Brooks says, we are planning for the contingency that we don't get additional money in the science budget for SOFIA, and that would mean that we would then have to phase out of put it in mothballs.
Well, and to follow up on that, even though Germany may be directly the only partner that has expressed concern, what kind of message does that send to the rest of the international community? And have you heard any response from others about questioning why this might happen?
Yeah, a good example would be ExoMars, which everyone was up in arms when we announced that we were having to step back from the initial agreements on ExoMars. When NASA entered into agreement with the European Space Agency on ExoMars, times were better. We were going to provide launch vehicles for the 2016 mission, the 2018 mission. When the 2013 budget was about to come out, I talked to the European partners and I said, look, we had teams in Paris. This was leading into Christmas. And I said, this doesn't make sense. You know, we've got teams working on all this stuff, and I don't know what the 2013 budget's going to be. I cannot in good conscience allow the teams to keep working towards something that we may not be able to support. I said, give us time. Let us look at the budget, and then we'll determine what happens. When the 2013 budget came out, we found out we couldn't provide the launch vehicles that we had earlier promised. They went and negotiated, and Russia, as a partner in ExoMars, agreed that they would do that. We agreed that we could hold up our end of the bargain on a communications package for 2016 and a very important scientific package on 2018. So the partners understood where we were. They go through the same thing. It's just that when they back out of something or they don't make a payment, it doesn't make the front page of the New York Times the way it does when the United States does it.
Thank you. And I asked you earlier about earth science. I want to ask you a question about planetary science. Can you talk a little bit about the continued cuts being proposed for NASA's planetary science program and whether that's consistent in light of the work that NASA plans to undertake on a Mars 2020 rover? How can the cuts to the planetary science program be consistent?
We are holding to a planetary science portfolio that we have brought to this committee and others for a long time. Mars 2020 is still on track. We have to find ways, innovative ways to do missions when budgets are reduced. And our budget has been constantly reduced over time. As I said, the President requested a certain amount since I've been the NASA administrator, and the amount appropriated has always been less than that was requested. And that's forgotten by most people. We have taken the resultant appropriations and we have figured out alternative ways to do things. Sometimes you de-scope a mission. Sometimes you have to cancel it, but we've really canceled very few missions in the time that I've been the NASA administrator because we've been able to find alternatives to how to do it.
Thank you. And even though that may be forgotten by most people, I doubt that it's forgotten by people on this subcommittee. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back. At this time, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the Planetary Society that has been shared with the minority ahead of time. Hearing no objection.
Mr. Chairman, may I get a copy of the letter, or can you remind me or refresh my memory of what it is, because
you can't.
I get all kinds of stuff.
You don't get the right.
I don't get to see it. Okay.
But we'll get you a copy of the letter, of course, in the attachment. So at this time,
is it good or bad? Can you give me a hint?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
They want more money for Mars and
answer it the way you answer mine.
Do they like Europa?
General Bolden, thank you. Thank you for your valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the committee may have additional questions for you, and we will ask you to respond to those in writing. The record will remain open for 2 weeks for additional comments and written questions from members. The witness is excused, and this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you very much.